Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming to this afternoon conversation. And you can enjoy the pleasure of meeting Rufus Wainwright, who is almost a featured composer and performer during this year's festival. Welcome to you, Rufus.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
You have been experienced the city and the festival for some days.
Yeah.
You have been participating in the opening ceremony. You have been also attending the Shakespeare Sonetts. You have written the music for that. And you have even offered the audience the 2 nights to an encore where you you performed yourself. That was very generous. And you have said hello to the
friends just arrived.
to the.
We have your lobbyist.
Yeah, you said hello to the Queen and to
Yes,
the King.
yes, I
yes,
have, King
yes,
and the
and you
Queen.
have been into the countryside, enjoying
Yes.
the fantastic weather yesterday.
Yes.
So, what is your impression of it?
Well, if I would like to have, complete and utter peace and contentment and health and, long life, I would move to Norway. Unfortunately, I'm, an artist, and I need horror. But so I live in the United States.
Yeah.
But it's really astounding how well, both welcoming and also and immediate the whole the spell is that this country puts over you if you reach out, I suppose. And I have been doing that, certainly performing here, not only this time but last year, and then driving out into the countryside last night with my husband Jorn, who's here. It's really it's like another planet, really.
Yeah. You even dress yourself.
Yes, and I'm wearing a Norwegian.
Yeah.
In America, you fall into the gap, and in Norway, you fall into moods of Norway.
Oh, right.
And that's what we've been doing.
We have millions of people
Yeah.
sitting here, so that was an advertisement for Moods of Norway.
Yeah.
All right. And you have even posted on your Facebook a picture where you are saying hello to the Queen.
Yes.
And apparently, I would say you had a good time.
Good. Well, they actually didn't want us to take pictures of the Queen, or her security guys seemed a little nervous, but in pure American style, I broke the law, but I hope she'll forgive me. But she seems very, very approachable. And very, very, it's fantastic that she loves the art so much and is such a great support. It's really, really great.
Yes. And going to your own country, you are born in the States but raised in Canada.
Yes.
And you have moved back to California.
Yes, we moved to California. Yes.
And there, not because of Trump, I guess. Because
just perfect timing, shall we say.
Yeah. But when I mention him, is because you are not silent. You are, in fact, writing a piece.
Yes.
Because tell about that.
Yeah, no. There's a song. I'm in the process of trying to finish my second opera, Hadrian, which will be premiering in 2018 in Toronto with the Canadian Opera Company. And that's in a while, and I haven't really. I released the Shakespeare Sonetts album, but I haven't necessarily been out front with my pop material. So I feel it's necessary to continue that dialogue, and so there's a song I wrote called "The Sword of Damocles," which is not directly about Trump, but it certainly applies. And I'm going to try to get it out this summer. Because I feel like now, especially after the election, it's important for everybody to just express themselves and really stand up in defiance.
Go against.
Do whatever the hell you can do, because it's pretty bad.
Right. Going back to the nature, to your experience here, I know you're a great fan of both Sibelius and Edvard Grieg, which national romantic music to a high degree is influenced by nature. Why are you so not obsessed, but interested in the music of these two Nordic composers.
Yeah. Well, I think there's something. It's interesting. It probably has mostly to do with my Canadian upbringing. I mean, there's where we grew up in Quebec, in the north of Montreal. There's actually a huge Norwegian population, and they really brought. Like, for instance, we always cross country skied as kids, and you know, there was actual Norwegian homes, like a lot of that style that you see here architecturally. You can see it there as well, and so I don't know. There was this sort of maybe it was the light, the snow, the cold. There's this kind of quality that Norwegian that Scandinavian composers have, especially Sibelius, and I know he's not totally Scandinavian, but Nordic and Greek have that corresponds to the climate and I think especially the light.
Right.
The light.
Yes. Which you experienced yesterday, actually.
Yes.
This light that never
stops.
Never stops here. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. I mean, I had the weirdest experience because we were in this very small town with I think 11 inhabitants, and and there was 4 of us, so I think it was a party, and we had this guy had bought the old school, the abandoned schoolhouse in the village. So it was like staying in a dormitory, and there was a sheep that was trapped. There was a lot of sheep in the area, but there was this one that was trapped, and it was on the side of a cliff. And the whole day, like all the farmers were trying to rescue the sheep, but they couldn't. So we had to go to bed, and all night there was this, whatever they make. I can't do it. I'm a city kid, and whatever that noise is. And it actually, as I at first I was like, oh, I'm never gonna fall asleep with the sun and the sheep noises, and then I actually started. It became extremely lulling, and I actually started to think of like.
Could write a song.
Well, I didn't write it at the time. I started to think of like contemporary classical music for some reason. I was like, this is like a John Cage piece.
Yes.
This sheep sound.
Sheep.
Counting. Counting. And I was like, I wish I could be counting dead sheep. But it was very. It's very inspiring. That's all I want to say.
So you have cleared your mind, and you are back in the not very big city, but still a city.
Oh no, it's a big city.
And tomorrow you will have a concert with Anne-Sophie von Otto.
Yes.
In the Greek Hall. There's still a few tickets left for you if you are quick. And that leads me to talk a little about your encounter with classical music.
Yes.
You have worked with Angela Kirchschlager, you have worked with René Fleming. You have this love affair with opera and with classical music. So this meeting with Anne-Sophie, how did that come along?
Well, we Anne-Sophie, who I don't think I've ever actually met. We've spoken via email a lot. I think even over the years, because she was a huge fan of my mom's, Kate McGarrigle, and she actually covered a couple of my mother's songs. I think she made an album with Elvis Costello years ago and did this song called Go Leave. So there's always been this rapport from a distance, and she's very much, I don't know, I mean there's different classes of opera divas. And I wouldn't really qualify her as an opera diva per se. I mean, she's more in the rank of a real kind of musical. I don't want to say intellectual, but she's very sophisticated in her choices. She does a lot of early music and a lot of contemporary stuff, but yet she can do Berlioz as well. So she's a really interesting force. And for me, it's just that gives me an in, certainly, because I think certainly with singers like her and maybe people like Angela Kirchschlager in a lot of ways, but they need to find different repertoire now because the opera world is no longer so mighty. So
No,
so
right,
yeah, so I think I come in handy. But yet I also know about the repertoire, and I have a respect for that type of exact scrutiny, I guess, of music. So it's a good fit, and I think I have something to give her, and she has something to give me, and we're just trying to keep the music alive.
Yeah, and renew it maybe.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so. Yes, renew it. I mean, for me, opera is constantly renewed. I mean, when you see those amazing works that have lasted for hundreds of years, they renew themselves because they were so well built to begin with. So I have great hope in the operatic kind of spirit. But you have to have that same. There is something in bringing it to another audience now, which I think is just a reality, probably.
Yes. Your music has been called popera and baroque pop. And
a lot of P's.
I think lots of critics they have difficulties.
Yeah.
Is it the one or the other?
Yeah.
And when we talked about this conversation earlier in history, there was also this kind of resistance against. If you know some of Gustav Mahler's music, it also filled with pop music, with schlagers, with marshes, and so forth. And he was also considered to be a little bit kitschy. So have you experienced kind of resistance?
Yeah. Well, as is the case with classical music, you know, the critics are the number one enemy, which is it's an old tradition that I don't think. That I think has always been the case, but there, you know, because there's this kind of, how can I say this? There's this battle between the academic side and the, you know, and the emotional side, and oftentimes the critics are never quite able to. They can certainly, you know, master the form intellectually, but when it actually comes to being an artist and expressing yourself and they just don't have what it takes, and so there's a lot of frustration there. I'm speaking of certain critics, not all, but you in the classical world you really run into that quite intensely, especially if you're offering something that's not, you know, by the book.
Right.
You know.
But then you have worked with artists which are have a great credibility and are such as Douglas Gordon, Bob Wilson, and then it's hard to maintain the pessimism, right? Because for instance, Shakespeare's Sonetts has one of the most popular pieces by Berlin Ensemble, and you how.
Well, I mean, what's interesting is that it doesn't matter. The issue, and this is the same the world over with all artists, is that. And maybe even human beings in a lot of ways in general, is, you know, you can get 20 fantastic reviews, but you're going to focus on that one bad one. That's the one you're going to read over and over and over again. And so the key is actually not to read your reviews and not to really care at all. But unfortunately, I didn't take that road.
Good.
And it's hard to get off it once you've started.
For you, those of you who haven't seen the Shakespeare Sonnets, we filmed a bit from the performance that we would show to you, and then we could talk a little about your collaboration with Bob.
Okay.
Let's see a little clip. Not too much music in this example.
Yeah.
There was a harpsichord in the beginning, and then
Yes.
let's dwell a little bit about the collaboration with Bob. How did that come along?
Yeah, well, Bob is kind of more than a friend. He's more than an artist, fellow artist. He's a real kind of, he's a spiritual leader in a lot of ways to myself and my husband Jorn and a lot of younger artists. And as in younger than Bob, and younger than myself as well. But at this point, but he's when you go to Watermill, I met Jorn, my husband, at Watermill really, or around Watermill, around that world.
And we should explain about Watermill. What is
Watermill? Sorry, it's called the Watermill Center, and Bob started it in the '80s, I believe, late '80s, and it's in Long Island. It's in the Hamptons. And it's where he basically workshops a lot of his stuff, and people go and do residencies and really just study his works and also create their own and are inspired by the general freedom and also discipline of all that Bob has to offer.
So you met him there?
Yeah, well, I met Jorn around there, but I'd gone to Watermill's the benefit. They have a very famous benefit in the summer, a big party. And so I'd gone for many years, and Bob was always this very mythic and distant and kind of Citizen Kane-like character. But then I got to know him, and then I got to work with him finally, which was a huge. What was interesting about it is that I had decided to write an opera, a prima donna, but then I thought, before I'd never written anything for the theater, and I thought, well, maybe I should, test out the waters a little bit first, and at the same time, Bob came to me and offered the Shakespeare sonnets with Berlin Ensemble, and I said, well, that's a pretty good offer. Let's try that, and so it was. I kind of dove in, and it really was this incredible baptism by fire of all that theater has to offer with those three elements, with Bob, the Berlin Ensemble, and the sonnets. So I was very fortunate to have that experience.
So he wrote 154, I believe, sonnets, and how reducing that to 25?
Yeah.
That must be a tough job.
Yeah, I mean, I read all the sonnets. I studied, their history somewhat, but it was really, and I had a few that I insisted upon, but it was really Jutta Ferber and Hyman and Bob who picked the ones that they used mostly. Right. But and it's interesting because I actually went in my naivete before working with Bob. I sort of did a lot of homework and thought I knew everything, and was had this whole construct of what the piece should be, and who's the protagonist, and how is this. Is this about the boy, or is it about, or is Shakespeare really Shakespeare? All of this stuff, and then immediately it became apparent that everything was going to get torn down. There was no regard for history, no regard for tradition, no regard for even the language, and it was going to be broken down, and then we were going to build it up again in this sort of very Wilson way, and it was fascinating. Not easy, especially in November in Berlin. So.
But then in the pit, we see a string quartet and 4 or 5 musicians, some of them playing several instruments.
Yes.
How do you instrumentate? That must be an important issue.
Yeah, well, I wanted to write. Well, what was interesting is that because I was getting ready to orchestrate my first opera, I wanted to write a lot for strings. So we obviously we couldn't have an orchestra, so I decided to use a string quartet, which is obviously such a versatile ensemble, and then there was some guys there, Hans Jorn and Stefan Rager, who had worked a lot with Bob on other projects, so they came in and helped, and it just kind of came about, really. And it was because of, when we would go to rehearsals and we would prepare to work together, Bob was he really destroyed any kind of preconception that you might have had or idea that you might be bringing forth, and you had to kind of really think on your feet and create something totally new, or something totally necessary. I mean, for me, at the same time, my mother was very sick and she was in the hospital, and now that I see the piece again, there's definite references to that I think he was picking up on, that only I realized later that he was, everything that was going on in our lives ended up being reflected in the piece, and you can do that especially with the sonnets.
So you did actually not only compose the songs, you did compose there's a lot of bridges and
yes,
so forth.
And
so
the incidental music and so forth.
I think we have a film clip showing a little bit more about the musical side.
Erscheinst im Traum mir du, Traums dunkel hell, erhellt die dunkel
Nein! Du, dessen Schatten Licht macht, sag, was zeigt dein Schattenbild für Bilderwelt, da du mehr Licht bist als der Tag bei Tag? Wenn schon dein Schatten so den Blick erhält, wie, sag ich, müsst mein Blick erleuchtet sein, könnt ich dich sehen in tageswachem Licht.
Nein!
Wenn schon bei Nacht dein schöner Schattenschein durch Schlaf zum blinden Auge Bahn sich bricht.
Right. So this was a kind of pre-study for your opera,
Yes,
really?
yes.
So and from this production, you got some new skills that you could use for your first opera?
Yes. Yeah, I got
Such
skills
as?
about that. Well, mostly about stamina and how to deal with difficult directors and fight for what you believe in. Because, as we all know, or maybe we don't, theater is a war. It's basically a war. And it's winner takes all sometimes. Yes, it's all about working together and we all live each other, but really when you're in the heat of battle with these works, you have to step up your artillery. So that was helpful in terms of going
and
into the opera.
is even worse than
Oh yeah,
theater.
opera, yeah,
It's just mad.
no. And it really, those two events happened simultaneously, really. So I was dealing with it on from both sides. But there was that, and then I think also, I don't know, I think just to for me, it's very important now because I've been in the pop world for such a long time, and that world is so, I don't know. It's not the. I love pop music and I love writing songs and I love doing shows, but there's just no. I don't know what the future is there in terms of actual. Not so much money. You'll always make more money, but in terms of like a real system, like record companies have collapsed and radio doesn't play popular music. Kids don't buy records anymore, and it's in such flux that now the theater world, even though you'll never be as successful monetarily, at least there's a kind of system that's there, and people who work there and that you can kind of count on to be there in the next year. So it was helpful in that sense too to start that journey.
I'd like to hear a little bit more about the actual composing process, because pop tune is lasting certain minutes, and even I can see that you try to have a longer and some kind of tension beginning and ending in the sonnets, but still quite short. Writing an opera or symphony, you have to think over a long period in time, and how building it up. How do you?
You have to become a total, almost a superstitious, crazed, belief-driven nutcase
Right.
to really write an opera. I mean, there's moments. I mean, yes, you have this kind of intellectual idea, and you get a libretto, and you want to work on this scene. But at many points, both in the composition of it and also in the production, raising the production, you just have to pray a lot to the gods of music and also to the characters that you're trying to give life to, that they will show up and play along. It's like for me, it gets very spooky. But that's what I love about it. And I don't, it's interesting because and what's nice about it too is that it has that element, but like, unlike, and I think pop can have that too, like when you're really trying to make a great record. But with opera, with pop, you can do a lot of drugs and drink a lot and have a party, like when you're young, and kind of something will come out. But with opera and theater, but mostly opera actually, you have to have all of your faculties going at 100%. You have to pay attention to the oboe line and to the prima donna and to the director on your back, and so you have to be really together in the bottom line, but also be crazy.
So you see the whole orchestral score in front of you when you compose? I mean, this.
No. Well, I mean, I see it. I write it, with the computer, and I have a keyboard, and I have the score in front of me, and I do it a lot by ear. I think there's a lot of technology that's available to me right now that allows me to compose operas, which I wouldn't really be able to before, because I went to music school, but I dropped out, and if I had stayed, and dedicated my life to being a composer, it would be a different story. But I chose to be a pop musician. So now there's certain technologies which allow me to actually do both.
Right. So after prima donna, which exists in various formats,
yes,
right?
It's had it has many more actually coming.
Yeah.
There's yes.
So now, Hadrian.
Yes,
This must be your main occupation right
yeah,
now.
This
Tell us
spring
about
and
this
the,
new
and the
opera.
fall
What do we?
and summer.
Yeah.
Well, it's about Hadrian and Antinous, the famed gay couple of the ancient world, who and it's about their relationship, and also it's a bit like Citizen Kane, actually. Speaking of Citizen Kane, where it begins in Tiber, which is Tivoli, which is now called Tivoli, which is Hadrian's insane villa that he built outside of Rome, and then it kind of goes back in time, and it follows his journey to both Athens and to Egypt, where Antinous was killed or sacrificed himself, or who knows how he died. You'll see if you come to the opera, and because that's exactly what happened, and and then see, I believe that's what happened. And then he returns to then you kind of come back to Tiber or Tivoli, and it's a bit like Faust too. It's kind of like he kind of goes and comes back.
You told me yesterday about the cast. Is that official? Can you say something about?
I probably can't talk about it officially yet. I mean, they're set. What do you think, Bunny?
No, because
well, all I'll say, we have a very, very famous American baritone who will be singing Hadrian, and a very, very famous. She's not Scandinavian. But she's Nordic, which is what country does that leave, right?
5 Nordic countries, so it is difficult. But
really,
the American baritone, we can almost guess, I guess.
Well, we'll see. But but it's Finland, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's Finland. One left. Okay, great. Yeah. Oh, Iceland. Sorry. Oh, sorry.
Scandinavia consists of 3.
So yeah, but those two. That's all I'll say. They're very, very well known and very, very respected. And I'm very, very excited to be working with them.
The fall 18, we will know more.
The fall of 18, yes.
In Toronto.
Yeah, in Toronto, and it's a 4-act huge opera with 10 main characters, and choruses and ballets and full orchestra. So I'm basically committing.
Do you have time for a new?
What?
Do you have time for a new album?
I'll probably release like 3 albums in the middle of it. I tend to. I don't know. I'm on fire.
Okay, fantastic. So, but maybe it's also time because you are now in the 40s.
Yes,
You have
this
had a
is it.
career over 20 years or more.
Yes.
And how has your way of thinking, writing, changed since the beginning? Now you are older, and you have yeah. You even said to a journalist here in Bergen that you could see the death,
the
in-
spectrum, the
yeah.
specter of
Yeah.
death. Well, certainly after having a child and our daughter Viva, who lives in California, and I don't know, really, and then experiencing my mother's death. There is this kind of urgency. You're kind of getting pushed up the back, and there's a cliff in front of you. So where you just have to appreciate the time that you have, and the fact that your health is good, and that you have people around you who love you, and that you love, and that you're not in a war-torn country, and so. I don't know. You do. I have some sense of. I seem to be developing a sense of gratitude for all of these things, and as an artist, that's this is the time to take full advantage of it, and I think also because I grew up in a family of artists, and and I see my dad, Loudon Wainwright, who's a fantastic singer and songwriter, but he's winding down and it's harder for him to tour, and there's kind of less time to really go over things in our life that we're trying to fix, and it's just I don't know.
Yeah.
I see that for sure.
Speaking of your family, it seems as if there's a great awareness of not only you in this country, but also your family.
Yes.
Something that you can experience in Holland as well, maybe? Or
No, both Scandinavia and the Netherlands and Belgium, to some respect, have always loved my entire family, my sisters and myself and my parents. France are impossible. France is impossible. No, I'm doing okay in France, but it's hard. Other parts of Europe are very difficult.
Yeah, and even in Cuba, because now you have a great project coming up in Cuba.
Yeah, probably
I've heard you
shipped off to
saying
Cuba.
that your audience is also older now, and they can afford to travel to Cuba with you.
Some of them.
What is this project about in Cuba?
I'm doing a week-long tour in Cuba in September, starting around the 19th, I believe, and I'm doing 3 concerts in Cuba with different Cuban artists, and there's a whole package that you can come and see cigar factories and dance the samba or the remba, whatever they do there.
Sounds great. I would like to come.
No, it's good, great. Havana's incredible. It's one of our favorite cities.
But as you said before, becoming a father really changed your life and your perspective.
Yes,
right?
immediately.
So by traveling so much, isn't it awful to be away from?
It's not. I don't. Yes, I miss my daughter and I miss my husband and I miss aspects of that. But the God honest truth is that I wouldn't be able to do it if I didn't love it. Above everything else, in a sense, at times. I mean, when I'm out there performing, or making music, or traveling and singing for new audiences, there's something there that's satisfied, which if I'm not doing it, I'll just feel empty. So that and that's what you need as a singer and as a touring artist. So I have that, and so I love going home, and I love seeing my family, and so forth. But I do get the itch, and I have to go out again, and there's this kind of bohemian or gypsy-like spirit, which is it just runs in our veins, in our families, both our families.
Yeah. Going a little bit back to the difference between pop and opera, it is as if there's not so long distance between the two art forms for you.
No.
But for many of people who have been working with music, it seems as it's two different worlds, but it isn't. Could you?
Well, I'm always amazed at the gulf between both genres, especially between opera and pop, and how, and that I've never understood that, because they work on the same premises, you know. They are popular forms, you know. Opera has historically always been about being the voice of the people in a lot of ways, or the voice of, you know, the romantic, you know, spirit, and so much of pop, like whether you look at David Bowie or you look at, you know, heavy metal or Prince or something, like there are these kind of operatic devices that they're all really using, but whether they're aware of it or not. So yes, I see a tremendous link, and I do think that there was a time, actually, not so long ago, when that was actually accepted. I mean, when I was a kid, Pavarotti was such a huge star. I mean, he was more than an opera star. He was a pop icon, and I think he was probably the last to have that kind of notoriety on such a worldwide scale with so many people. I mean, Placido Domingo kind of has it, but Pavarotti really was like a bona fide superstar. And when you go further back, I mean, my mother and my grandmother, you know, you'd watch opera singers on the Ed Sullivan Show, and then you'd see the Beatles, and then you'd see, you know, the Rolling Stones. So they were sort of more enmeshed, and even in like the art world, like in Warhol times, I mean, a lot of those people would, you know, do a lot of crazy things and listen to, you know, the Lisbon Traviata, you know, Maria Callas and stuff. So I think it was more connected, and I think it should actually return to that, and only because what's great about opera right now, and why it's so important, and so I think so valuable, and will experience a resurgence, is that it's one of the few areas left with actual care taken in terms of acoustics, in terms of, you know, the power of music, totally unaffected by technology, you know, but that there's this purity to it that. But yet it's grand, you know. It's still this spectacle. It's still this. So I think for young people to actually go somewhere and hear something that is just good for your ears, I mean, physically, you know, you're not being bombarded and made deaf. And I don't mean in terms of volume. I think there's just such, I don't know. There's something about the sound that opera creates that needs to happen, because you have to have the voice singing over the orchestra. So there has to be this balance, that and where volume becomes more about depth than about actual volume. And so I think that's a human need. I think humans need that.
Yeah, and through opera you can.
And through opera you get that.
You get that. And also say something which is important.
Yes, yeah, all of that stuff. All of that stuff.
There's one genre that you still have to consider, and that is symphony. Do we see a symphony from you?
I'm afraid of writing a symphony.
Why?
You know, I mean, I saw the other day I was in San Francisco, and I've been talking about this a lot, and it was quite a while ago, but I went to see Michael Tilson Thomas do Mahler's First Symphony, and I was struck by how potent and relevant it was to today. I mean, there's really, in terms of what's happening now in the world, both politically and with the environment and just in the psyche, there's nothing like just a symphony to explain that, with no words, no production, no lighting, you know, it's just all about the music. So it's a bit scary to me, a symphony, but, you know, maybe, who knows.
But still, in Mahler's First Symphony, on the first page in the score, it says, wie ein Naturlaut. That's again the nature coming up, like Sibelius. Is that something that is a kind of sounding board for you?
Well, I am. You know, I am doing music for Ivo van Hove's next production or one of his productions coming up of Our Town on Broadway, and there is a long piece of music that's starting to come, which is somewhat symphonic. So it might just it might just come on itself. And that's like, I mean, I imagine a symphony or any kind of well, especially symphony, I imagine, is quite natural. It just kind of comes.
It needs to.
Yeah. So
yeah.
and then you
Yeah.
gotta go.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I guess you're here, and we might as well deal with you. And
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah. You mentioned Evil, the one that also directed the Bowie, the last movie,
Yes,
right?
the Bowie.
Litteraturhuset.
Yeah.
So how did that come along? That
He's been a fan of mine for a long time, and I
So he just called you?
his.
Yeah.
Yeah, they called me up, and I love his work as well. And as I said, in the Netherlands, I've had this really fantastic history there, so it just made sense. And you know, the play we're doing is Our Town, and it certainly is. You know, once again, it's like, what about this project with Shakespeare, Robert Wilson, and the Berlin Ensemble? What do you think? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Why not?
and now it's Ivo van Hove and Our Town and
it's
Broadway.
Great
So,
artists.
like,
You are lucky. You're lucky. And they are lucky to have you
I
on
guess,
board.
I
Yes.
guess so. We're all
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a little bit time left. It's now, if you like to ask this gentleman about something that you would like to explore, then it's your time now. We have, I think we have a wireless mic here that we can bring to the audience.
Anybody have a question?
Anyone? Come, don't hesitate. Yeah, I see many great fans of you here.
Second, hi, Birkan. Yeah, there. This is a songwriting line. Now, when you're writing a new opera, how early in your writing do you start involving humans? I mean, trying out. How early do you workshop?
That's a good question.
Because things tend to change during rehearsals.
Yeah, I mean, I with Prima Donna, my first opera, I started quite early, just to see if the direction I was heading in made sense. And I've done a little bit of workshopping with this one later in the game, but I was pretty convinced pretty early on that what I was doing corresponded to the classical voice. I had a moment of fear early on that it would just sound ridiculous, because that can certainly happen with operatic voices. But it was so now I just do it, and then we go to rehearsal. And
so how early will you start rehearsing Hadrian?
We've done some workshops already, but we're really I'm in Aspen. For anybody who's interested, I'm in Aspen, Colorado for the month of July, workshopping the opera, and they're actually open to a lot of those rehearsals will be open, and they're going to be running through some of the orchestra stuff that'll also be open. So if anybody wants to go to Aspen, Colorado, I'll be doing there this July.
A question. In the writing process, do you find that there is a noticeable difference between working with opera and working with musical theater?
Yes. I mean, I will say, I loved working with the Berlin Ensemble. But that being said, they're not great singers, as opposed to opera singers or even musical theater singers. Like, they're not big voices. It's like a whole other tradition. It's more Sprecht style, and so that was a challenge because I tend to really overdo it with my voice. So I had to kind of tailor the pieces to their capabilities, and they had to really push themselves. And that was great in its own way. Musical theater people, to tell you the truth, I haven't really had that experience yet. I mean, I've worked with opera singers. That's always a challenge, and wonderfully gratifying. I hate to say it, but what I am shocked with opera singers is that, I feel bad saying this sometimes, but there's a real difference between a great opera singer and kind of an okay opera singer. I'm attracted to anyone who can do that with their voice is fantastic, but when those singers who really have that special something and the opera, that's really where it works. I mean, I suggest everybody try, but I thought that all opera singers would be amazing, but they're not. And and musical theater people, I'm yet to really dig in with them. I haven't done that yet, sort of for that typical Broadway thing, and I'm sure that'll have a host of issues as well.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Someone looking over there.
When have you decided to get a musician or an artist?
When did I decide?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't decide that. That was thrust upon me. I was very, very precocious as a young child. But as I said, both my parents were artists, and and my mother picked up on that almost immediately, really, and started. She claimed that I could modulate when I was 6 months old, which I don't think is true. But so it started, and it's funny because we were just going through my old house. We have a house up in Saint-Sauveur in Quebec, and we were going through the house looking at old things, and I found these letters from my dad to me, postcards, and he's like, "How's that job search going?" That's what really. My dad wanted me to mow the lawn, basically, but my mother was pretty set on it from very early on, so I don't really know when it happened.
Hi.
Hi.
You seem to have kind of this endless source of creativity, as though like the muses are constantly speaking to you 24/7. But do you ever get tapped out? And when you do, what do you go to kind of reawaken the flame or get inspired again?
Good question. Let's see. Do I ever get tapped out? I would say that, if anything, I don't get tapped out much. But there's a very famous monologue in The Seagull by Chekhov, and I can't quote it, but there's just this part where this young woman, whoever her name is she's obsessed with the writer guy. And she's kind of asks him the same question, or says, not the same question, but it's like, it must be so wonderful being so inspired all the time. And then he answers, no, it's living hell. Because, everything becomes, a piece, and everything has to be explained and expressed, and then you just get really exhausted. And I do feel that, for me, I sometimes find a difficulty or get lost, I guess, in that border between just living your life and that being, a good person and a good father and good husband and stuff, but with being an artist, and how in a lot of ways expression it's not really a door, it's a window that occasionally you can jump out of and kill yourself. So yeah, and then I think in a lot of ways that can actually bring around some bad work. Like I might think I'm so inspired and I'm so brilliant and I know everything, but you're just exhausted and you're kind of writing half-assed stuff. So and it is in fact in stopping and being a human being and not worrying about, your record companies, that you then actually replenish the actual good stuff. So that's kind of, I think, what happens with me. Even though I think I might be really, really inspired, I actually should probably just take a break.
Right. Maybe a last question from more there. She was closer.
Yes, hello. You said when the symphony comes to you, you'll just have to deal with it. But what comes first? You also write things that are really not empty sense-wise. I mean, music is one thing, but what you also express, opinions you express through issues you take up. what comes first? I mean, it's a creative process,
Right,
but
right,
you
right.
seem so full of music,
Yeah.
but you also seem so
Well,
full of opinions.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Damocles song is, maybe it's a nice way to end tonight, because that is, I will be releasing that song this summer if I'm happy with the video, but it's an interesting illustration of the process, because, you know, I was very close to Carrie Fisher, the late great Carrie Fisher, and I was actually hanging out with her quite a bit before she passed away, and there was this one conversation I heard her having over the phone with her attorney, in which she was, you know, bemoaning something and said, you know, it's like the fucking sword of Damocles, and I didn't, and it kind of hit me, and then another friend mentioned it like that week, that expression, and then I just sort of was looking at the news, and the next thing you know, the song was there, and I think it comes to you. I think you have to be able to actually pick it out of reality or out of the real world, and be receptive. I think that's the main thing, is you just have to know how to be receptive, and it doesn't come from you. It's being given to you. So it's always it starts with a gift from the world.
That was a closing. Comment. Thank you for coming. You can experience Rufus with and Sophie von Otter tomorrow, together with the string quartet Brooklyn Rider, in the Grieg Hall in the Bergen International Festival. Thank you so much. We are honored having you here.
Thank you.
Yeah.